Hi, I'm Brian. Welcome to this edition of That Wilderness Survival Show. Over this series, I would like to share with you some survival skills that hopefully make your outdoor experience more enjoyable. Here we are with episode 2 on fire. In the first show, I showed you how to light a simple fire just using a match. With this show, I'm going to show you how to make and construct a bow drill and blow your tinder to a flame and light a fire without a match. So what we need to do first is we need to gather materials. Like in the first show, materials are very, very important. Dry is an absolute must. And I know on the West Coast sometimes it's hard to get dry materials. With that being said, it's the same sort of principle. Large trees shielding their base and the small branches on the bottom of the tree. What you're going to need for a bow drill is you're going to need a bow, which can be green because it's got a bit of flex. You're going to need a fireboard, which needs to be nice and dry. You're going to need a spindle. Your spindle is going to be probably about the size of your thumb. And you're going to need a handhold. So with those 4 things, we've got to construct them. We don't need a large area to go around collecting the bits. So right here I found some larger bits of wood. With this piece of wood right here, I would take my fireboard out of a piece like right about here. You're going to break it off here and here, and you're going to try and split it right through the middle. Then you will carve your notches in it and go from there. That I will show you a little bit later. So what we also need is a spindle. What you're going to look for is a nice piece of dry wood, and it's going to have to be fairly straight. So right here, and it doesn't want to be punky, it wants to be firm but dry. Nice crisp crack to that wood. So right about here we have a fairly decently straight piece of wood, about the size of my thumb, all right? And you want it to have, 8-9 inches long. Little shorter, not too bad. You get it too short, it makes it really hard to work with. So we've got the fireboard and the spindle. Out of this we'll be able to get our handhold as well. I personally like to use bone for my handhold, so it's taken me quite a while to scavenge it because bone doesn't burn. And the piece that I found fits really nice in my hand. This is something that you really want to practice and look for because gathering of these materials is important. And if you throw something like your handhold in your backpack because maybe you found a really cool rock that's got a really nice in-depression in it. I've seen all kinds of different stuff used as a handhold and kept in survival kits. So we've got our fireboard, we've got our spindle, the bow. The bow isn't really important that it's dry. It wants to have a little bit of flex and it wants to be fairly long. So we can use dry wood for it because it does have a bit of flex. What we'll do is we'll clean this all up, make it nice, and I will show you how to tie your string onto it. And you want your bow to be fairly long because if you have a short bow, that means your stroking on your kit is going to be short. You want it to be long because you want the friction to last as long as you can. So you want a fairly decently length bow. So what we're going to do is we're going to go back down to the beach. I'm going to show you how to construct your kit and see if we can't blow a coal to flame. So one thing that we do need to do is to get really fine tinder. Fine tinder's a little difficult to find in a rainforest, but not impossible. The cedar tree, of course, is something that we can use. We can use the bark on the cedar tree. Usually the outside surface of the cedar tree is damp. What we need to do is we need to get just below the surface. So when you scrape it down, you can see how it scrapes off in a bit stringy. So what we're going to do is we scrape down below the outside surface of the tree and we get down into the layer, but not deep enough that we're getting into the wet of the tree. So there's kind of a transition zone in the cedar bark itself. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to scrape this down and get ourselves a nice little tinder bundle out of this tree. So of course you can see we're on the edge of a road, but this is still conducive to what we're going to be doing. What you're doing is you're looking for really, really, really dry tinder. The stuff we scraped off the cedar tree is really good. If you can get this stuff, grind it up, you grind it up really, really fine. I'm going to gather it and I'm going to bring it down to the beach. It can even still be a little bit green in color. That doesn't mean that the moisture hasn't all gone out of it. The tops of your weeds, very good tinder, all this kind of stuff. So this is what you're looking for. You don't want to have any moisture in it. You can do the moisture test on this just as well as you can do the moisture test on everything else. Right on your bottom lip, and you can feel the moisture in it. If you feel moisture, you can't use it. So we're going to go from here, we're going to go down to the beach, and we're going to show you how to construct your bow drill kit. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to demonstrate how to blow a coal into flame. The thing about this is it takes a lot of practice. You can't light a fire with a bow drill if you haven't learned how to light a fire by blowing a coal to flame. The best way to practice is to gather the materials that you need, and then after you've lit a fire, you're down at the beach or you're in your backyard or whatever, you just try and find a nice little coal, you blow on it, you make sure it's red and it's glowing. That's what's going to light your fire. And then it's just a matter of remember, good dry materials. And there you go. You've got fire. Now you're going to put that underneath the teepee that I showed you in the last fire. And that's what's going to be your match.
Hi, I'm Mike Holmes. As both a father and a contractor, I know the importance of having a safe family home. But for far too many children around the world, this is just a dream. They have no one. That's why, for more than 50 years, SOS Children's Villages has been rebuilding the lives of orphaned and abandoned children around the world, giving them a home, a family, education, and a future. To learn more, visit soschildrensvillages.ca.
Fainting during exercise or excitement is not normal, and it can be deadly.
Okay, here we are down at the beach. Take the piece of stick that I showed you up above. We're going to split it down the middle, and we're going to create a fireboard out of it. Always remember, try to keep your hands away from the sharp edge of your hatchet. So what we've got is a nice flat area there. We'll take a little bit off the back. You want your fireboard to be 3/4 of an inch, a little bit better than 1/2 inch, 3/4 of an inch, and an inch is about the thickest you want it. If it's too thick, it's not your coal has to build up too deep, and if it's too thin, your spindle will burn right clean through the fireboard. So I've got this piece right here. This is what a fireboard looks like that's been used a few times. I'm going to use this fireboard because I know that it works well. That lip test I was showing you, I can tell this piece of wood's slightly damp. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you in a few minutes how to get a spot on your board that you can get a nice little coal from. So the next thing we're going to do is I'm going to show you how to make the spindle. So we got a fairly straight piece of cedar here. We're going to cut it off. So we get it cut off right there. We want to find the straightest piece. And remember, like I said, 8-9 inches long. It wants to be nice and dry. So what we're going to do then is we're going to take all the bark off. We want it to be fairly rough. You don't want it to be really smooth, otherwise your string will slip. So what we're going to do is we're going to carve this right down so that we have a nice little spindle. And you want the ends, you want to carve the end to a nice round point on one end and a nice fine point on the other. And I'll show you in a minute why you're going to do that. Now that we've got it carved down to a decent shape, we're going to carve one end to a nice fine point because that's going to go into your handhold. Because you wanted a fine point on one end because there's less friction here. That's going to go up. The bottom end, which I've already blackened, you just want to make sure that it's fairly straight and smooth. You notice how the spindle isn't really smooth. It's kind of rough because you don't want your string to slip on it. Okay, so we've got our fireboard and we've got our spindle. Taking all the bark off of the bow, we've got a nice flexy piece of wood here. And in the end of this, we are going to tie a clove hitch. The reason for that is because you can walk a clove hitch tight or loose. Just by taking the line, here and pulling it and tightening it, and it'll walk itself loose or tight. You don't want this string really tight, because what you want to be able to do is to put your spindle in the bow like that. All right? So we've got some decent length. We've got the string at about the right tightness. Just throw a little half hitch in it. Some would call it a safety knot. And then it's not going to have a tendency to slip back. All right, so we've got our bow, we've got our spindle, and we've got our fireboard. What are we missing? We're missing the handhold. You can use a piece of the same wood that you used before, hence the fine point. A lot of people that I know that do this look around to collect things. What I have done is I have collected a fairly neat little handhold here. This is a piece of bone from a dead deer, I think it was. Fits into my hand really nice. It doesn't burn out. It's a piece of bone. I know guys that use rocks and they carry them in their survival kit. It's odd to say that the handhold is one of the more important parts because they're all really important. It's just that when you start doing this, you're going to realize how important it is that your handhold doesn't heat up, that your handhold isn't the one that is causing all the friction. Because when you're using the bow drill, you want all your friction to be down below because friction is heat. So what we're going to do now is we're going to get into position so that we can show you and demonstrate the proper technique for using a bow drill. Another very important part of lighting a fire with a bow drill is your tinder bundle. You saw earlier where I gathered the materials. We have materials here. Now where you're going to put your coal that wants to be your finest grind up materials. So what we have here, what you're going to do is you're going to grind it up really, really, really fine so that your coal heats this up. Remember, it has to be heated up to 400 degrees to let go its gases so it lights on fire. So you're going to put this and make this really, really, really fine so that it releases its gases early. What it looks like there, a little bit of really fine grass that we pulled from the side. You can kind of mix them together. So you've got, this is the beginning of your tinder bundle. Then you've got your, I guess we'd call it hay-like material. I like to take mine and fold mine on the top so it sort of stays together. And then just push this really fine piece right into it like that. But you've got to make sure that you can blow through it like that so that the air will pass through it. And when the coal gets on here, it will filter into the back where it's more dense and you'll be able to blow this to a flame. Now remember, you're going to have all of this set up. Your fire is going to be completely set up. I know this is all burnt down from our first show. Where I stuck the match in our first show is where you're going to stick your tinder bundle. So you might want to make it a little tiny bit bigger than when you light the fire with the match. Please remember, folks, that this does take a lot of practice. And reading in a book and watching it on TV is one thing, but if you ever want to do this, you're going to have to practice, practice, practice. It's called dirt time. When you're in the bush, I like to keep sharp tools on me. My hatchet, my knife, my multi-tool, a pocket knife, and my hunting knife. I like to keep a stone in my pack at all times, just so if you're using your knives, whether you're in the bush or your hatchet, you can keep a nice edge on them. I like to keep my stone in a case so it doesn't get chipped. The stone that I use is a whetstone, and it's got a fine side to it and a coarse side to it. So that if you do chip your blade, you can bring the edge to where the chip is gone and then put a nice fine edge with the fine side. And yes, I do use my stone on my hatchet to keep my hatchet really, really sharp. A sharp tool is a safe tool. When you're in the bush, if you're really struggling to cut whatever it is you're cutting, you're more apt to slip. If it's nice and sharp, you know it's sharp and it does the job very well. Thank you.
If I make a mistake, will you give me away?
Will you leave me behind when you move? I'm cute now, but someday I'll grow up and you'll get tired of me. We know we're a lot to handle. Which one of us will you get rid of?
Do I really have to beg for your love?
Please don't make me sleep outside. Would you hit me if I scratched the couch?
My parents are allergic to me. Can I come and live with you?
If I wet my bed, will you rub my nose in it? If you won't play with me, who will? I cry when I'm left alone. Will you have me put down?
Okay, so important part is preparation of the fireboard. To prepare the fireboard, a small little notch is drilled with a knife or a hatchet so that it looks something like this. Now then what we have to do is we have to spin the spindle in it and get our shape and a little bit of depth to it. And then I'll show you how to cut the notch. So you use the exact same technique that you're going to use to light your fire. All right, so you notice my technique. I'm going to have my foot nice and close to where I'm going to spin it. I've got the spindle in my fingers like this because it's fairly tight. It can pop out. And trust me, you're going to know what pop out means when you start doing this. Hold your hand held in your hand so it's nice and comfortable. And then it's just a simple matter of working it back and forth. This is the exact same technique you're going to use to start the fire. But what we're trying to do right now is just burn a small hole so that we know where to put our notch. Okay? Just like that. You notice how the friction has already started to light the fire. So you don't want this little burn spot right here to be too far forward. What'll happen if it's really close to forward, it'll burn and pop, and then your spindle will just pop out of your fireboard. So you want it to be back a little tiny bit. As you've noticed, I carry a Leatherman everywhere I go, just because it's got all the neat little bits and little tools that make this job quite a bit easier. You can do this with a knife, it just takes a little while. So what I do is I just cut with the saw on my Leatherman right into the fireboard here. And you don't want to cut in too deep, and you don't want to make it too wide. It's like, if you want to call it like 1/8 of a pie. This is also a technique you're going to have to master. It's going to take you a while, and it's frustrating. That's all I can say about it. So, what we do then is we put our little tinder bundle down on here. We're going to set our fireboard right where we want the coal to drop. So the coal's going to drop out right there, and that's where we want it to be. So then we take our spindle and our bow. We set it there like that. Foot nice and close. Your foot's going to be putting pressure on it because you want to hold everything in place. We've got this nice point right here that causes a small amount of friction. And we've got this big point here that causes a large amount of friction. What's going to happen is the harder wood of the spindle, there's a hint, harder wood of the spindle is going to carve out some of your fireboard and drop it down in there, and the friction is going to cause it to light. So here we go. You want a nice good form, so you don't want your bow out here. You don't want it here. You want to come parallel to your body. Nice long strokes. Okay? And then as the smoke starts to build, you don't stop. You're gonna the pressure you put on your handheld is just something you're gonna have to figure it out. It needs a fair bit of downward pressure, but not a ton. And then what you have to do is you have to speed up and watch your smoke. And you watch your smoke change. Now you can see the little bit of smoke coming out of here. That's good. That's what you want. Little bit of smoke. And drop it down. Little bit of wind, and it went out. This is a part that you're going to have to do, and you're going to have to figure this part out. It's not really a close science. It's just practice, practice, practice. Sometimes when you're building your fireboard or you're making your materials, you get a small inconsistency in your fireboard. I've noticed that the end of my fireboard is a little bit punky, so I've moved it down just a little bit, and we're going to give it a try again. So spindle into your bow. Got to make sure your string's fairly tight when your spindle's in your bow, otherwise you get slippage. Nice and comfortable on your handhold. And then it's nice, easy strokes in the beginning. You can see how fast the smoke comes when you've got the right materials. The trick is practicing getting things going exactly right so you don't pop out. I was talking earlier about how your spindle can pop out. That's exactly what that just was. But as you can see, we've still got smoke here. So maybe, just maybe, I've got coal. There you go. And that's how you light a fire with a bow drill. You put that into your tinder at the base of your little teepee fire, and you're burning away. Thank you very much, and have a great day.